Wonderful. Thank you so much, John. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marianne Nazaro, Director of the MTW office. Thank you so much for joining us once again for these webinar series for the Cohort 1 MTW expansion agencies. Today, we are going to talk, next slide, please, Laura. Today, we are going to focus in on the MTW supplement. So today is part 1 of 2 of webinars that we will be specifically focusing in on the MTW supplement. So today we will be part 1, the March 24th webinar. We will do the second part of the supplement, and then we will also have office hours later on a date to be determined to focus in on any additional questions that you may have on the MTW supplement. We are still waiting for OMB to approve the final MTW supplement. We are hopeful that that happens in the next couple of weeks. And once we have OMB has approved the form, then we will be able to provide access to you all for the online form, and we hope that that's going to happen by March 24th. We have some intel that that should happen, so fingers crossed. Next slide, please, Laura. So with today's specific piece, we're going to focus in on what is the MTW supplement, to talk a little bit more on the public engagement, to answer the question that we've been hearing from so many of you about where to start, where to begin with thinking about MTW, how do we get started. You'll hear a conversation between Jenny and me, which may mirror a conversation that you all could have within your organizations. We will then give you a brief snapshot as to what the online form will look like for the supplement. And then we will talk about kind of things to keep in mind and things for you to prepare between today's conversation and the next one on March 24th. And obviously throughout the day, we will answer any questions that you may have. Laura, next slide, please. And with that, I am going to turn it over to John Kincannon, who will get us started as a reminder of what is the MTW supplement. John?
Okay. Thanks, Marianne. Hi, everyone. I'll be walking through what the MTW supplement is, beyond it being a form with a very, exciting name. It's really an important document for you all in your program. It's obviously a supplement to the PHA plan, purposely had it attached to the PHA plan, something you all know the process well already. The MTW supplement collects information about policies being implemented at your agency. MTW agencies will use it to communicate their plans with residents and community stakeholders through the required public comment process. HUD, there are multiple uses for it. HUD will use this information collected to monitor and evaluate your MTW program. As you know, the demonstration, we're really trying to learn from it. And even qualified agencies have to submit MTW plans annually, supplements annually, just so we know that what you all plan to do in that year. And at a high level, you can submit your MTW supplement with your next regularly scheduled PHA plan submission, or you can submit it as an amendment to your PHA plan, just as you could with a PHA plan. And I will just say one thing that's hung up right before I move to the next slide, that's hung in the MTW office, not that we've been in HUD headquarters for a year, but we have a picture of the very first MTW plan submitted by an agency. I believe it was Portland, Oregon, and they took their 24 CFR, they put it in the ashtray outside their building, and they lit it on fire. So that was their symbolic, waiver of all of these 24 CFR. Now, you don't have quite that much waiver authority, but I do think it is a way to rethink your program. Next slide, please. Now, one thing we've talked about on several previous webinars is public engagement. There's a reason why we're returning to this topic. If you could hear something, sage advice from your MTW peers, and I was thinking about this, something we've really learned through the RAD program is really public engagement, reinforcing that, because inherent in the MTW program is change how you operate as a housing authority, how you serve your community and your residents. So we really believe it's important to engage the public. Now, you all are used to doing public hearings, and we want to make sure you hear loud and clear that for your MTW effort to be successful, you're going to want to focus actively on engaging your residents and communities in the public process that will be woven throughout. The operations notice is really the bare minimum of what's required. But agencies that have experienced MTW, as I just mentioned, and they'll tell you again, that involving residents and getting their insights and buy-in is critical to success. We know engaging residents can be challenging. Even the biggest and agencies that focus on it, it can be difficult. They're also used to, residents may feel like it's a check the box process as well. And we know this varies. While there's no one right way to engage residents in the surrounding community, successful strategies generally include establishing trust, educating residents about MTW, being inclusive, and coming prepared. Next slide, please. One, with public engagement, when it's done right, it's a real process. You need to do all 4 steps in the previous graphic: trust, education, inclusivity, and preparation. That's more than some agencies outside of MTW, but what all experienced MTW agencies will tell you. Luckily, because we know how important this is, there are some pretty in-depth resources for you, much more than I've just gone over in this 5 minutes, and that Jenny will also inform you all on her experiences. But there's an online manual that will walk you through those 4 areas, and there's interactive training that will really help you think about implementing concepts in real-life scenarios. And that's, you can see the graphic here, it's located on HUD Exchange. You can see a photo, there's a video to watch. That's, the person there is from Atlanta Housing Authority, and you'll hear from many other housing authorities who are doing this well. And so, but for now, it's one thing to hear from myself, but I'd like to turn over to Jenny Rainwater. She's part of the HUD team now, the MTW team, as of within about a year ago. But we pulled her from her previous experiences running 2 MTW programs at different MTW agencies. So we thought it would be really beneficial for you all to hear from her. She's passionate about the importance of public engagement, and so take it away, Jenny.
Hello, everybody. And I think passionate comes from just having experienced it and learning from doing, and learning from the other agencies that are also currently moving to work agencies. I think the reason why we all talk about public engagement is because it becomes essential as you move forward in the program and implementing of activities. But I started this process back in about 2008, and there had already been a program, a pilot of moving to work happening that was in partnership with the welfare department, with the HSA organization, because it was a county housing authority. And in looking at that in 2008, well, there had been success. The agency as a whole was really excited because they were looking at this as an opportunity to take what they had learned already and broaden it across the entire department, which was really thrilling. And with that, and with that ability, and with that expansion at that moment, it was a great opportunity. We all recognized it. We were excited, but then we were left with, now what? Now what do we do? How do we even begin? Even having had a pilot program around self-sufficiency activities, now it was like, where do we even begin? And trying to figure that out left us with, frankly, where do we start? We started with the internal staff, because everybody has ideas and thoughts. And I personally had thoughts of, why in the world do we have to do this? Or how do you fill in this blank? Why would we not count somebody who has actually an asset, like they have a home that they rent, in the calculation of whether or not they're program eligible? Things like that. So as we looked around it, we looked at the questions that were happening, and we really approached it with everyone that we came in contact with, everyone that we talked to, everyone that the same program participants touched. And we sat down with everyone. So that ranged from the staff, it ranged from our program partners, it was the residents, it was the participants, it was, frankly, the public leaders. And with all of those agencies, with all of those component parts, we asked them the same question. And that was, what's working or not working from your perspective? And I have to tell you, sitting down with the legal advocates with that question, you get an earful. But it was a very helpful thing, because we approached it from, we don't want to sit across the table from you anymore. How can we make this better? How can we make it work? And so in doing that, we got a lot of ideas for figuring out where do we start. But where that led us through that process was, there were common themes, there were common ideas, and there were things that everyone talked about. And that gave us a way to figure out that question of where to start. How do you do it logically? How do you begin? Where do you show what you're doing? And as we did that, that in itself demonstrated that we, one, were willing to listen, and two, that we cared, that we wanted people to be successful. We wanted this program to continue to help, and to help in an effective way. So we looked for those common threads, and then we went looking at the guidance that we had of, what did MTW allow us? Where could we apply some flexibilities? What could people take in and absorb and do? And that's where we began. And frankly, it took those baby steps of where do we begin that led us then to what ultimately became the program as a whole. But it started from, there are great big ideas that you can do, but you have to actually do them. And that laying of the groundwork was vital, because all those people that we talked to through that engagement process ended up being great, not just legal advocates, but advocates for the program itself. And they sold it, they talked about it, they could answer some questions about it, and they knew who to talk to if questions came up from their perspective. So I think that's a big reason why most agencies who are currently moving to work will talk about how important this is. So back to you, Marianne.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Jenny. Thanks so much, John. Laura, if you could go to the next slide. We are now in the questions portion. Just want to see if you have any questions. We do have a couple that have come in on the Q&A box. As a reminder, you can submit any questions throughout the presentation in the Q&A box, and we will answer them as we go along, and also towards the end. And also, if you do want to say something verbally, then just put in the Q&A box, I'd like to speak, I'd like to ask a question, and then we'll open up your mic. So the first question we have here is from Anne, and I'm going to ask Jenny, I'm going to ask you to take this one, Jenny.
Okay.
The question is, what do you mean by coming to the public engagement prepared? Does this mean already having a basic plan in place, or just being able to listen?
I think I think it's both, frankly. In my experience, we didn't have a plan already in place. We had big ideas about what we wanted to do, but we really wanted to hear what people thought, and really from their perspective. So coming prepared is being prepared to listen. People have not always easy to hear comments that they want to share with you. Fine. And there are lots of things that you just can't do. So as you go through the process, I think that may shift from just listening to coming in a more active, to being able to show people what you're thinking, what you're preparing to propose, so that they can talk with you about that. So I think it frankly is it's not either one thing, it's both. Great.
Thanks, Jenny, and thanks for the question, Anne. I'm going to ask, John, could you pull up the first polling question? We'd like to ask you guys a question. So John, if you could pull up the first polling question. Here's the question. Indicate if the following statement is true or false. Residents in the community must be involved in the MTW process through public comment on the annual MTW supplement. I'm expecting a 100% correct response here.
The poll will be closing in 20 seconds. Please submit your answers now.
Okay. And while that poll is closing, we will be sending out a calendar invite for the meeting on the 24th. So, all right, true. The answer is true, that residents, community members must be engaged as part of the planning process for the supplement. So, very good. Are there any other questions before we move on to the next section? Okay, Laura, I'm going to ask you to move on to the next slide, and John, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay.
Hold up the press. We just got another question. Jenny, this is coming back to you.
Okay.
This is a great one. So this is a tough one. What if you don't get a lot of responses, or what if you don't get a lot of tenants participating?
I would say that is one of the #1 challenges, is to get people to show up. And in practice, I think what usually happens the first time out is nobody shows up, and you're left with now what? And so that's why it's really important to talk to so many different people that touch the same group of participants, so that they too can talk to it. But when you start talking and word gets out about things that you're proposing to change, people will comment and will show up because they want to know what that means. What will it mean if you're going to change how you calculate my rent? What is that going to mean to me? And they'll become engaged very quickly. But it is a challenge. And pre-COVID, the way to get people to show up usually was food. So you would offer lunch along with the meeting, or you would have snacks or breakfast or coffee or something. Those things that help people show up. And you all know it. You all know these things from trying to engage with your community already. So it's really building on that and just showing people, that you're interested in what they hear and that you do want to make this program even better for your community.
Awesome.
So
great. Thank you, Jenny, and thanks for the questions. And if there's any, feel free to add additional questions. We'll answer them throughout the presentation. And with that, I'm for real this time going to turn it back over to John to talk about where to begin. John?
Okay. All right. Thanks, Marie. Hi, everyone. We've heard this question a lot, and even in some of our breakout sessions from a couple webinars ago, is about where to begin for you all. And this is something that Lawrence, Kansas, and San Bernardino, those housing authorities, talked about as well. But to come up with this kind of graphic for us for you all to think it through, and we know this process is really going to be different for every community, because we have 31 communities across the country in Cohort 1, all with different rental markets and different needs. And so, we're here on this webinar for the supplement, but that's really the end point. Once you're putting in this information into this web-based tool, you've already gone through the public engagement and thought through what you all want to do. So this is sort of, before you get to that, there's actually a thought process you're going to want to go through as you prepare to complete your supplement. And that's, this first box is really identifying what's the desired effect or impact or outcome that you want to see for your housing authority. And one good way to think through that is through the lens of the 3 statutory requirements of MTW. They're broad enough to kind of capture a lot, but that's housing choice. Are you looking to provide housing choices, getting families to possibly better neighborhoods in your community, constructing more low-income housing, Are you looking to achieve cost effectiveness, cost efficiencies at your PHA? Looking at self-sufficiency. And usually it's a blend. I'm not saying it should only be one of those, but kind of thinking through that desired effect or impact. And once you're able to think through that, then, that's a better way, we think, to start than to start looking at the activities. Figure out what you want to do, and then you can look at the activities to find a way for you to get there through the MTW waivers, through the agency-specific, or through the safe harbor waivers. Figuring out if you do need those waivers. If those activities do have the waiver authority, whatever your kind of impediment, working with HUD regs or a statute, making sure that waiver authority is in the operations notice. And then plugging all that into the supplement. The supplement's really a repository for all of your good thinking and preparation work. So it's kind of a final project, just informing HUD and documenting the process. Now, agencies will typically start with easy or low-hanging fruit. And then there's a question about, when should they begin more complex activities? And that really depends on you. I know you might not like to hear that answer from us, but have you established enough trust, or do you need to engage your community more, or just you need to think through what are your desired outcomes with your board and with your staff at the housing authority and your partners and your residents that you serve. Kind of with that, I'm going to pass it over to Marianne and Jenny for the next slide to really think about this, kind of how you might think about this range.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. So this beautiful slide, this may be one of my new favorite slides. Jenny and I are going to have a little bit of a conversation to demonstrate what this conversation might look like. So how you might think about what you might want to, where to start, how to get going. So we're going to be doing a little bit of a role play. So you may be having these conversations, within your own local communities. And so we're going to just kind of bear with us. We're trying something a little bit different here.
No judging.
So I'm going to be, no judging. So I'm going to be Marianne Nazaro, colleague, friend of Jenny Rainwater. Jenny is a staff person at a new MTW agency. She's one of you. She just got the designation, and so we're having a conversation. And so this is just a way to kind of think about what this might look like. So, hey, Jenny. Congrats on your designation with MTW. That's really exciting. How are you feeling about it?
Hey, Marianne, thanks. This is just really awesome. We're really excited. Our staff's been thinking about moving to work a lot through this process, and they're really excited about what it's going to mean. They have for years felt so overwhelmed with everything. So they're thinking about what that will mean. They also, just from an agency, we've been thinking about how their role potentially can change from that of sort of being a police officer, and making sure people are behaving and providing what they needed, and having that to what is it going to mean for them to be more in a support role. I mean, they still have to provide documentation, they still have to do those things, but that their kind of key place might shift a bit. So they're kind of just thinking about those things, what that's going to mean, how they're going to do it. So they're excited, a little trepidatious, but overall excited.
That sounds great. It sounds like you've been having some really great conversations with your staff. What about your residents? Have you had any conversations yet with your residents and tenants?
We have, and I think this, all of us having to deal with this pandemic has made us really work with each other and talk to each other a lot, because everybody is left with, well, what do we do now? So those conversations have happened. And I think in working and talking to residents and tenants, as well as our staff, people are excited about the possibility, but they're sort of hesitant. They want to know how it's going to affect them, frankly. What is this going to mean? And so I think it's created an opportunity, because we've had conversations due to just day-to-day life, but this brings a new take on that, a new perspective.
Yeah,
So,
and that's definitely understandable.
yeah.
Have you talked with any other of your partners, any legal advocates, any other stakeholders?
We have, and we've had some great conversations with just the simple question of, from their perspective, what's working or not working. People have thoughts about it. And so they've come with a lot of ideas how our programs can be more in sync so that it doesn't feel like someone has to do the same thing with everybody or not. And why do you ask for this when I go over to get assistance with my utility bill? They don't ask me these questions. And so it's been helpful for all of us to work together and to bring things forward to see if we can look at it in a new way.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different stakeholders, and it sounds like you've got a lot of really some different ideas. Do you have an idea as to where you want to get started, kind of where you might want to start?
You know, we've got a lot on our, just from those conversations. And frankly, one thing that did come up was when we talked to kind of the elected leaders. You know, they also had different and unique perspectives, but really important ones. And so we realized that there's lots of things, and from looking at the operations notice, it's really exciting because it's like we want to do all those big ideas, but recognizing that we sort of have to get our house in order first, deal with that,
Yeah.
and be ready for it, because change is challenging for everyone. And so we're just continuing to have those conversations, and I think it's going to come, but you know, we're starting, frankly. So I think showing that we're listening and that we're taking people's ideas in, and some things we know just, you know, right out of the gate, it's not going to be possible. So just being honest about that.
Yeah.
So
That's great. Yeah. So what do you think, what's the problem, what's the impact that you're going to try to address?
Well,
to start with, what's the problem you're trying to solve?
Yeah. Well, like I said at the beginning, you know, staff feeling really overwhelmed. So one of the things that I think would be helpful kind of to everybody, staff and participants alike, is if we see the opportunity for maybe establishing an alternate recertification schedule. And so if we could switch to, instead of seeing every household every year, doing a plan so that we could see the households every other year, that would instantly create space in someone's day to be able to have longer, more detailed conversations with people, etc., to just start building in that sense. So that's a change that I think everybody could handle without it's having to learn a whole new thing, so to speak. That just
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, good.
And do you think that would, like, I know MTW has the 3 objectives: the housing choice, cost effectiveness, self-sufficiency. Have you thought about which one of them this might be connected to?
Well, we have been keeping those in mind, and I think it's vital actually for our organization to frankly survive. And well, we really want to, you know, look at housing choice. I don't see us having the capacity or the finances to build today. And we certainly want to help the self-sufficiency of families. But I think right now the cost effectiveness is really where we are looking. How can we run our program more efficiently and in a more maybe streamlined approach that I think will also serve. So I think we're looking at cost effectiveness to begin.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I guess, so you're talking about doing these alternate recertifications. Would it apply to elderly, to disabled, to work able? Which households would this apply to?
Yeah. Well, as we've been looking at it, considering it, I think it's actually going to apply to all. I think that will be the easiest to implement. I think the easiest for everyone to understand. And I don't think anyone would argue with having to come to the Housing Authority once every 2 years or every other year. Yeah. So I think that's a win-win, frankly. It's a good way to begin. So.
And would it apply to just new households, all households?
I think in addition to being all households, it would also include the new families and folks that are coming onto the program. So we were looking at, you know, how could we even do this? What would that look like? And so we're looking at, frankly, to make it as easy as possible, again, just to divide our program by the household's last names. So in maybe year one, we see everybody who has a last name that falls between A through K. And then in the following year, we see everybody who is has a last name of L through Z. And then we could easily, for people coming on the program, use the same manner. So we would do their initial eligibility, and then they would either be seen next year, depending on what part of the alphabet we were seeing, or the following year. So it'd be very easy to implement, and then it would be also very easy to maintain.
And that makes sense.
Easy to understand.
That makes a lot of sense.
Cool.
Yeah. And so you're not doing them all at the same time every couple of years.
That's correct.
So would it cost anything for the agency? Would there be any cost implications to the agency?
Initially, I mean, obviously there's going to be some just time involved, the cost of time for training of staff with this, but we don't think so. Because this is our normal business. This is what we do, and so I don't think so. As we have done some research, we can see that people have changes in their lives, in their household compositions, in their jobs that they new jobs that they're awarded or that they lose. So there are constant changes, and so we're looking at that, being able to handle the interims that we have to process. So we're looking at how our interim policy might also be affected, but still seeing that just between establishing an alternate recertification schedule can also blend nicely with the the interim policy that we have now. So
it sounds like you've done some thinking on the impact for the PHA. Have you analyzed the impact it might have on the families or other factors?
We have looked at that, and frankly, in looking at the operations notice, we did look at the requirements around that with both the hardship policy and an impact analysis. Obviously, we need to do some more in-depth analysis of that, but just upon initial review, it looks like it really truly is a win-win, and that people wouldn't be adversely affected by the activity. And again, because we do have this hardship policy, if someone experiences, because you don't want somebody to lose a job and have this rent that they can't afford. I mean, that just sets up failure. So by having an interim policy in place where we would process decreases, we're looking at, can we afford to, we would still want people to let us know if they have an increase, but we wouldn't process that till the following research. That would also build in some possibility of self-savings for families. Right. So that would support self-sufficiency as well. But again, it's not our intent right now, but it's a beginning point. So
that sounds great. And I imagine that as you think through the impact that this may have, you'll use the factors that are listed in the operations notice that spell out kind of items to consider as you're thinking through the impact analysis and what needs to be in the hardship policy. So I think there's probably some good resources there as well.
Absolutely.
Have you checked the ops notice to see if there's if you can do this within the safe harbors, or if you might need to go beyond the safe harbors?
It looks pretty good, but the other thing we know is that if we need to apply for a safe harbor through the supplement, we can. So, along with the impact analysis, that's something we're looking at. Can we work just within the authorities that are there and with waivers that are there, or are we going to have to go more specific into this, asking for a safe harbor waiver or an agency specific waiver? So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So this sounds awesome. So what are the next steps? Where do you go from here?
We obviously have work to do, but from training staff, but we also want to get our supplement together, get this finalized so we can get it posted, frankly. And so again, people can see from the meetings that we've had, they can see the progress that's been made, they can see what that will mean, and they can look at it from just, how is it going to affect them? So as our residents were talking at the beginning, they're really concerned about what this will mean for them. So by seeing the supplement posted, by seeing this information, they can readily see it and review it and comment on it. So,
all right,
kind of our
fantastic.
Yeah.
And there you have it. Marianne and Jenny are heading to Hollywood. Just kidding. I promise
Or
no judgment.
fade to black.
So that's just, exactly. That's just an idea. That's just an example of the type of conversations that you may have. You'll hear more about the kind of types of questions that you have to ask through the supplement, but you really want to be thinking about the impact. So just as an idea of the type of conversations that you guys may be having with your team, with your communities as you get started and thinking about your MTW program. So thank you, Jenny, so much for your expertise, as always. And so with that, I'd like to see if there are any further questions. And I see that we did get a couple more that did come through the Q&A. We got a great job, Jenny. Yay, thanks, George. So we did have a couple questions that came in, so we're going to answer these questions, and then we'll turn over to a break. So the question is, I guess, Jenny, this is to you when you were thinking and talking with your community members. Did you present all waivers outlined in the operations notice to the residents and community members, or just what you were thinking about implementing? And I've got a thought on this one as well, but Jenny, if you might want to get started on that one.
Sure, and the answer is no, frankly. We didn't talk about every possibility at that point in time. We really started with, hello, Mrs. Smith, what do you think? What are the things, where are the pain points, frankly, for you? Is it trying to get to the agency every year to bring all your paperwork to have to see if you're still program eligible, frankly? What's happening? What are the challenges? Or is it because you have an ineligible citizen living in your household? Is that the problem that you're facing? Or what is the problem that or are there any problems? Maybe it's all great, but most of the time people have ideas. And that's really, so it really grew organically from them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It sounds like, and I think we've heard that from, we heard that from Kristen Verity. We've heard that from some of the other executive directors of the current MTW agencies, is think about what is it that you're trying to solve? What is it about the HUD, the rules, the regulations that has just not made sense, that you've been kind of running up against the barrier? What is the challenge in your community that you haven't been able to address? And kind of get those ideas through your conversations with your residents, with your staff, with your community, kind of figure out what that solution might be. And then at that point, take a look at the operations notice to see if that waiver is already listed in there. Or maybe it's in there already and you can just, do it within a safe harbor and it's done. Maybe you realize that you actually have the ability to solve a problem that you didn't realize that you had absent MTW. So think about what is the challenge that you and your community and your residents are experiencing, and can MTW be a tool to address that?
Yeah.
So thanks. Great. Very, very important question. Okay, John Kincannon, question for you. Due to COVID, is it okay to engage with the residents by telephone conference?
Yes, absolutely. And the CARES Act waivers, definitely have a lot of flexibility around this. But yeah, that makes complete sense. Phone calls, conference calls, however you need to do it. This is definitely a unique time.
Yeah, great. Thanks, John. And Jenny, and then John, how long do you think this general process would take? How many meetings would be a usual amount?
Personally, I don't think there's a prescribed amount. It kind of, the takeaway for me is I always wanted to make sure that we communicated with the people we were trying to serve. And so it was a constant conversation. Those conversations actually also came out from staff doing recertification appointments. We really tried to create a way to have touch points with people however we could. So, and especially as someone else asked about how do you get people to show up? How do you get tenants to come? It was, how can we think creatively about this? And as John just said, you know, especially today, those telephone conferences are really important. We've heard from some people that have just said, some people have been really excited about that because they understand the technology and they get really excited that they can be on the phone in this meeting and having these conversations. So I don't think there's a prescribed amount for the supplement and doing your submission. Obviously, you need to have a hearing, a public hearing. So that is prescribed. But as far as how do you engage, it's really showing people that you're open and willing to listen, at least at the beginning.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jenny. And John Kincannon, can you talk about the specific requirements as it relates to the PHA plan? Jenny alluded to it there at the end, the specific requirements for the PHA plan process.
So those PHA plan public process requirements are the same. That if you are just implementing MTW waivers, so you have your public hearing, bring it to the board. Those same time frames but as we've highlighted, that's really a minimum. So you can have a lot more engagement in meeting with your partners and your community of care, continuum of care, and going to developments if you have place-based developments. But if you are in terms of the operations notice, if you are implementing activities that require a safe harbor waiver or an agency-specific waiver, that requires an additional public hearing. So you may have two. And the reason for that, we're not trying to be overly prescriptive. It's just that it was recommended to HUD to have this separate meeting because oftentimes these agency-specific waivers can be a lot more impactful on residents. Perhaps, in the past, could be something around like a time limit or a work requirement or something like that. So we just want to make sure that because it potentially could have so many impacts on families that everyone just has really a chance to thoroughly discuss it. But even though those two activities I just mentioned are MTW waivers, so they wouldn't require anything above that, but I'm just saying sort of an impactful type of activity.
Right. Thank you, John. And so with that, John, this is another question for you. Can the extra hearing for the agency or safe harbor waivers go behind the safe harbor? Can extra hearing to go beyond the safe harbor be right after the public hearing for the supplement?
Yes, and I think we might have an FAQ on that, but yes, the simple answer is yes. It can be the same night, one after another, but just want to be clear that its own focus is on the agency-specific and safe harbor waiver.
Right. Okay. And okay, so I think that answered your question. Okay, so last question. Oh, no, this is a great one. Do we need to wait for the MTW ACC amendment to be approved to start the public process of hearings on the supplement? And the answer is no. You can start talking to your community now about kind of what are your plans for this MTW designation, which you will have soon. Great questions. Okay, so last question, and then before the break, and I'm going to turn this one to Jenny for like I think a pretty, it depends on you response. The question here, Jenny, is I understand, but at what point do you pull the trigger in saying this is the initial plan? When do you pull that trigger?
When you think you're ready to implement that plan is when you pull that trigger. Yeah, you need to make sure you're ready to go. Make sure your staff is ready to go, things in place. Making sure that you've been able to train. I mean, I don't. And John and Marianne, you can correct me, but I mean, I know agencies that set up and put ideas forward that they're going to consider in the following year, in the upcoming year. And, so obviously they're not, once they submit that supplement or that plan, this is their proposal. And there are others that are like ready to submit once they hit approval for that, they're ready to go the next day. So, I mean, it's something that will depend on kind of where you're at and what you're doing, frankly,
Okay.
when you pull the trigger and what that's going to mean.
That's right. Okay, and then this one is the real last question, and this one is for John. And John, my fiscal year ends on June 30th. Do I have to have this supplement amended to this annual plan, or can it be separate? And this is and this will be a great FAQ too for those 630 agencies that are about to get designated.
Yeah, because if your normal plan, you'll have to submit 75 days in advance of the fiscal year. So you'll have to have gone through that public process prior to that. So I think part of it is contingent upon we're waiting, as Marianne alluded to, we're waiting on approval of the OMB form, the actual OMB supplement. And then, as we'll be touching on soon, showing you how to go through sort of our next training, really go through in detail how to submit the supplement in the system. So I think it's going to be tight in terms of timing. It may have to be an amendment to your this coming fiscal year if you're a 630 PHA. But I think just considering where we are in the year, I don't know, would you agree, Marianne?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and you want to make sure that you have time to do a full and robust public process. So that might be something that we want to delve a little bit deeper into, and we'll send out one of those insider tips emails with more specifics. But as John said, for those 630 agencies, you may want to do it as an amendment to that next PHA plan, since it's going to be a little bit tight to get it into place for this one. And with that, I'd like to take next slide. I'd like to take a 10-minute break. So on my clock, I see 2:48. So by Eastern, so by 2:58 Eastern, we'll get started. So just want to give you guys a few minutes to, catch your breath, take a little break, do some stretching, and then we will get back and kind of walk through, show you what the actual online form is going to look like. So with that, I'll see you back here in about 10 minutes. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed your break here in the East Coast. We've got some great sun, so I got a little sun on my face. Hopefully you all are back and ready to keep moving. So now, Laura, if you could go to the next slide, please. Fantastic, thank you. So now we are going to dig kind of a little bit into the MTW supplement, really just to give you an idea as to what the online form looks like. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to John. John?
Okay. Thanks, Marianne. And hi, everyone. Hope you had a nice break. We're going to walk through the supplement sections. There are 10 sections to the supplement. You may have already taken a look at the PDF version of the supplement, the most recent one that's on our website. So you're probably familiar with it, but if you're not, that's okay too. This is an electronic version, a web-based version that will walk through and only present you with the questions you'll actually need for activities you select. So if you did look at the PDF version, you may say, wow, this is a lot, but you're only going to be filling it out for relevant sections of what you actually plan to implement. What we're going to do today is take a little bit of the mystery out of what this thing is. We've talked about it a lot, probably saying, what is it? And just a little bit of background, it's a web-based form because it's something we want to be able to use and analyze at HUD. as you think of your PDF submissions of your PHA plan that go to your field office, it's just HUD is really unable to roll those up because they're in PDF. So this is an easy way for us to roll things up, hopefully getting HUD into 2021. So it's not quite ready to share with you yet. As Marianne alluded to, it's still waiting for that final approval from OMB. But just getting a look at it now is to set up how you should, help you feel and feel good about what will be coming next. And I just want to repeat, emphasize this is not a training on how to complete the supplement. Really just an introduction and a high-level overview of what you should expect. We'll do a deeper dive in the next webinar and kind of go through step by step, actually, showing you the drop downs and things like that. And then we'll have some office hours. So after you've had a chance, after you've been granted access to the system, looked at it yourself, tested a little bit of it. If you have questions, we'll have office hours and we can answer them live. So don't sweat the details, and we're going to show you now, but we'll walk through all 10 sections, just to give you kind of the big picture takeaway. So next slide, please. The first section, this is really just PHA information, just like you fill out the PHA plan, that first section. Most of those sections that are grayed out, your PHA name, PHA code, program type, cohort number, fiscal year beginning, that's all pre-populated. Information we put in there and information we're pulling from PIC, say for the program type and things like that. Only thing in section 8 you're gonna fill out is your fiscal year and what your submission type is. Is it an amendment to your previous plan, or is this your plan year? Just to make that clear. Next slide, please. And slide B this is a narrative, and this is something we heard from, at first we didn't have this narrative in the MTW supplement, but we heard from your MTW peers, the 39, that they feel in the MTW, what they submit, they have an introduction section. The same thing, it's a narrative. They thought it was really important to have that so you can explain to your public, to your residents, in kind of a layperson's terms, what you're doing through the lens of the 3 statutory requirements. I would recommend, I think you could consider it an executive summary of what you're doing. I would recommend going on our website, looking at some plans from, King County or San Antonio or Keene, New Hampshire. Look at their introduction section. That's kind of what we mean just on what they're doing in MTW. But it's just a good descriptor, something that you can use in your materials, because when we move on to some of the other sections, they just get sort of policy wonky, but the narrative is your chance just to explain in your own words what you plan to do and what those we were talking about before, those desired outcomes. You could talk about some of that. So that is the narrative section, and there will be I believe there's a character limit that we'll get into next week. I'm sorry, next webinar. But for the next section, I'm going to pass it to Jenny. Jenny, are you there?
I am. Sorry about that. Nothing like talking and then realizing you're completely silent. So this is just building on the conversation that Marianne and I demonstrated to show you that, in looking at the alternative re-exam schedule, so this is the section C of the supplement. So this would be a part that you would potentially fill out, and with the supplement, it frankly is very smart, and so it will give you the questions that you're going to need to answer. So, if you are looking at that form that's currently posted on the MTW expansion, it's showing what is out and going through OMB right now. But if we drill into this specifically, it's asking you, if you plan to implement this in this year, and then it gives you options. So it literally is a drop-down question, which everybody loves drop-down questions, right? So next slide, please. So again, still under thinking about that alternate recertification schedule. This is another narrative box. And I know that John mentioned there was a note on the previous slide that talked about maybe drafting these narratives in a Word document so that when you come to be filling out the supplement itself, you can do a copy and paste function into these boxes. So you're not having to try to extemporaneously compose what you want to put in this section, in this box. And again, very simplistic questions. It's just really statements of fact. You know, what statutory objectives does this activity apply to? You heard Marianne asking me, what do you think this is going to apply to? Is it increasing housing choice? Is it a self-sufficiency? Is it a cost effectiveness activity? So, you know, those are options. It's a drop down again. And what your expectations are. You know, what will this do as of today? What do you expect? So next question, or next slide, please. And the next two slides talk about core questions. So these are just, again, questions. These are just questions that you're going to be asked. This is just, you know, a matter of course questions. Does this waiver apply to all families on your all your assisted families, or is it relating to a particular subset? So again, you have a drop down there. These are just questions. Again, really easy for you to fill out if you've done your research, as you've thought through these different activities, what you want to do. And this loops back to, again, what we tried to demonstrate to show. Marianne kept pressing me, you know, is this for everybody? Is this for, you know, new households coming on your program, or is it for your current residents? So this just shows you, again, what you'll see. Next slide. You can see, is this activity applying to all your public housing developments? These are questions that should be pretty easy to answer. And again, here's another narrative box. You know, you can see plan to implement in the submission year, or is it not yet applicable? So hopefully these are going to be easy to answer questions as you fill out the supplement. It really, truly will walk you through this process. I think next question, please, or next slide, please. As you're working on your activities, if you know a hardship is required, if an impact analysis is required, again, this is the material you want to have at your ready before you begin working on putting it into the supplement itself. But here it just asks for you in the operations notice, you know, you need to develop a pilot policy. Here's the place where you would upload that policy. As you can see, the file types of that upload need to be in PDF or Word system. I can't imagine you do a hardship policy in Excel, but that would probably not be recommended. The form doesn't allow for that, so you want to have it in one of those two forms. But again, it is telling you what it's needing. From the operations notice, you know what you need to do and have it ready. There is a naming convention, so you can see we've recommended that it has your PHA code, it has the fiscal year that you're putting this in, and what is the short name for this policy or this particular item. Next slide, please. Marianne, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Great, thanks, Jenny. So as you may recall, the MTW operations notice, each activity has may have safe harbors that the activity can be implemented within those safe harbors without any further approval from HUD. And we've also described a simplified process if the agency wants to implement the activities going outside of the safe harbors. And so that we call that a safe harbor request. And so in order to submit a safe harbor request, you just need to upload the appropriate information into the system. All of the safe harbor requests will, require an impact analysis, hardship policy, so the system will allow you to upload those as well. If you could go to the next slide, please. And so, and again, not all activities will have safe harbor requests, but in the event that the activities do have a safe harbor request, then you can just, you'll note here whether or not you are going to be submitting for a safe harbor request. And next slide, please. And then this slide just specifies the types of information that would need to be included with any safe harbor request, and it's consistent with the language in the operations notice as well. Next slide. And then additionally, the MTW agencies may request an agency-specific waiver if they want to implement an activity that is not even contemplated within the MTW operations notice. So if you want to waive a statutory or regulatory waiver that's not included as part of the MTW waivers in the operations notice, you can do that by submitting an agency-specific waiver request. In order to do this, you'll need, as we talked about before, you'll also need to have an extra public meeting. You'll need to also include an impact analysis and hardship policy. And you definitely want to make sure that you do a lot of really good, have a lot of really good conversations with your community as well in thinking through whether or not you want to do an agency-specific request. If you take a look at Section 4C of the MTW operations notice, there's a lot more information there relating to the agency-specific waiver requests. Next slide, please. And then similar to the safe harbor waivers, there's certain information that needs to be included and uploaded as part of the agency-specific waiver request. And with that, I'm going to flip it back over to you, John.
Okay. Thanks, Marianne. I'll be walking through Section F, and again, want to highlight what my message from the top. This is just sort of an overview of each section. Feels like we're going fast. Don't worry, we will go in detail through each of these at our next webinar. This Section F is on public housing operating subsidy grant reporting. This is, we would recommend, as Jenny referenced, if you have this information in a separate Word document, but checking with your accounting or finance department to provide this information to whomever will be completing the supplement for your agency. If you have it as a separate document, you can just cut and paste different cells into this table. If you don't have a public housing program, don't worry about this. This is you won't don't have to worry about this table. Now, only OPSUB grant funding awarded in the year that the PHA is designated an MTW agency and beyond must be reported in this field. So if you are execute your agreement in fiscal year 21, that's where you will start recording that. And it's if you take a look, it's actually federal fiscal year. Additional rows can be added for additional fiscal years beyond, say, the year you're designated. One thing you may be scratching your head saying, well, why are we doing this? Well, the period of availability for public housing operating fund is 4 years, and the statute you may or may not have heard of, the Federal Accounts Closing Act, you all must expend federal funds no more than 5 years after the period of availability for obligation. Now, the short answer is, so you have 9 years. So 4 years is the period of availability plus 5 years after that to obligate, or obligation expires. So because with your MTW funding flexibility, if you have, this could be a way to perhaps set some funds to the side or to build up anything that you wanted to dedicate towards. You have 9 years. So I think that may be news to some folks. Note that you won't be able to cut and paste the entire form or upload it into this. It will require you, but for each year, it's, the fiscal year, your operating subsidy authorized amount, how much you have dispersed by 9/30 of that reporting period, and your remaining not yet to be dispersed funds and the deadline. And we're going to be adding in instructions, just as I referenced, so the deadline would be say, at 9 fiscal years beyond when those funds were awarded to you. So again, we're going to get into this in a little bit more detail next webinar. Next slide, please. The next few slides are on MTW statutory requirements. There are 5 of them. Most of this information we will be able to get from the PIC system. So for your public housing information from families, your voucher families, we'll already have that tenant level information from PIC. This is and ideally, once our system is stepped up, the 5058 form for expansion agencies, the ones you all will be using, will capture information for local non-traditional program families if you have any. So once that's stepped up and implemented, we'll be able to strike this information. You won't have to submit it in this online form. So right now, it's really just a backstop in case we don't have for that middle period when we might not have it stepped up. But if you don't have any local non-traditional families that you're serving, these will be zeros. So the first requirement is 75% of your families are very low income. Again, this is only asking about the local non-traditional families, and it's local non-traditional families that were admitted into your program in your fiscal year. So you just have to keep track of that. But again, if you don't have any, and we don't expect many agencies to implement this in their first year, these will likely be zeros if you don't implement a local non-traditional program. Next slide, please. The second statutory requirement is establishing a reasonable rent policy. We will have instructions on that. That's really just a drop down. You have the term of your agreement of your ACC amendment to establish a reasonable rent policy. That doesn't have to be implemented in your first year or second year. You have time to do that, and that's what we've been encouraging you all to do. Obviously, you've heard this repeated theme, but we do have a definition of what does meet the definition of a rent reform activity, and that is the waivers under waiver 1, the rent policies, and I'm missing the other waiver. Anyone jump in off the top of my head, but that will be spelled out. So you'll answer that question. The third statutory requirement is serving substantially the same, or we call STS. And again, we'll be able to get this information for your public housing and voucher families through the PIC and PIC VMS system, but you will just need to tell us the number of unit months served in the prior full calendar year for local non-traditional families. Again, if you don't have any, those will be zeros. The next slide, please. The comparable mix by family size. Again, this is all of this is taken from the 1996 statute and is applied to all MTW agencies. This is looking at your and for this statutory requirement, you'll just have to put in the number of the family size for local non-traditional families. If you don't have any, zeros, and we'll be able to get this information for public housing and voucher through PIC. And the final, next slide, G5, is around housing quality standards. This will be contained in your MTW certifications of compliance that you will sign, and it just certifies that you are complying with HQS for your various MTW housing programs. So those are the statutory requirements. So I will pass it to Jenny to round us out here on the next step.
Excellent. So as we talked about kind of throughout today, and the receiving, the engaging with your public, engaging with your residents, this is the place that you would be able to upload that information. And you can see that this is where you would put the copy of all comments that you received. So really looking at the formal comments you received, at your public hearing and around that process. But you would be uploading that file. And then also the narrative of what steps did you with your resident advisory board, your tenant associations, aside from many people can put comments in, but if you don't do anything with those comments, then they don't really mean anything, right? So how did you review those comments? How did you consider them? What was the decision that you made as a result? Where did you make a decision? Did you change some aspect of an activity? That's where you would put that information. And then again, you would upload that here. And you can see the green box on this slide. It's just really recommended. Keep records, keep notes, keep lists of who attended your meetings, who was there, and the comments you received. And just keep in mind that these are going to be really important historical records for you at the agency, because as you move through the Moving to Work program and as you're in it for many years, you think, where in the world did that idea come from? And you can't remember. You think, oh, it's just yesterday, and then you look back and you realize it was 5 years ago. And so those end up being really important documents. So that's just a keynote. Keep these things handy, keep them filed in a particular way so you can easily find them. And next slide, please. If you are participating in a specific evaluation, you would put that information here. You would answer it if you are with an agency-sponsored evaluation. You would give more information about what that means and what that looks like for your agency. Next slide. The certification of compliance. John mentioned this previously, and you can see that there's a box on the slide that talks about, well, what is the certification of compliance? What does that mean? That is in that supplement form that is currently on the website. There's the link for it. And frankly, if you want to write this down, on page 18 and 19 of that form is the certification of compliance. So at this moment, what you would need to do is to print that out once this form is approved. And that's the form that either the chairperson of your board or secretary will need to sign and date that. And that's the form that you would need to upload here. So I know it seems a little roundabout, but I want to make it really easy for you to know if you want to go take a look at it. But that's the official form that you would be using and acknowledging. Next slide, please. And once you hit the submit button, you will see, you will celebrate forms submitted successfully. The thing to note is once you do hit that button, you can't go back. You can view it, but you won't be able to edit it. HUD will receive it, HUD will review it, and if for some reason there's something that needs to be modified, you'll get an email back from the system, frankly, to make updates, and then we'll let you know when it's approved. And again, as we talked about throughout this webinar today, good record keeping is crucial. You will find your files get really, really large, but it will be a really important historical record of what you did, when you did it, and why you did it, frankly. And as you're working on the supplement, you've heard John talk about, Marianne talk about, have things that need to be uploaded maybe in one document so that no one person usually, well, they may wear many hats, no one person does it all. So you may have to talk to your accounting department or the accountant that works on your books to get some of that information. You may have to talk to someone else about what happened at that particular meeting that you had on this date, who was there, what happened. So, having all of that and being held by maybe one person or in a central location, keeping the copies of your impact analysis and hardship policies, because they may change over time as you look at it and as your program and the participants on your program change. If you have that there, easily accessible, and in an order that everybody can use and find, because, unfortunately, everybody has different filing mechanisms and filing methods. Some people have stacks of paper, some people have a filing cabinet. Just coming up with where is this information going to be stored and kept so that anyone can access it. And the other recommendation is, as you're working on this, put together a work plan, have an idea with the end in mind, and work backwards from there so that everybody knows what's happening and why they're being asked for something and can comply in giving you, whoever is submitting, the information that they're going to need to do so. So with that, I'm going to stop there and hand it back to Marianne.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jenny and John. Phew, we made it through the supplement. I know that sounded like a lot. As John mentioned, kind of at the front end, we wanted to, the purpose of walking through this was to show you what it's going to look like, what you can expect, kind of how we hope it will be a simple way to enter your information for what you want to do with MTW. All of the information that we talked about is available through that link on the previous slide, through the supplement that's pending OMB's approval. And so once we have that approval, we will all have access to the supplement. So we'll be talking about it a lot more so that you can become familiar with it. But really our goal here today was just to give you an opportunity to see the supplement and, you know, see the tool, kind of think about how the process might work from, you know, congratulations, you're an MTW agency, that's awesome, now what? To, okay, you've worked through your public process, talked to your staff, pulled all the information together and put it in the supplement. So with that, before I go to the next slide, I'd actually like to pause here to see if there are any additional questions. I saw a few more did come in through the Q&A. As a reminder, you can submit any questions through the Q&A box. You can type them in, or you can type in, I'd like to say something, I'd like to talk, and then we can unmute you, and then we can talk as well. So with that, I'm going to go back into these the comments on the that have come in. So the first question, I will take kind of the question as, what does a good impact analysis have? Any tips for what we're looking for when reading the impact analysis? So as a reminder, the MTW operations notice has all of the requirements for the MTW expansion. And so Appendix 2 of the MTW operations notice spells out the various factors that you need to consider as you're putting together your impact analysis. And so really this is a tool for you to give you an idea of like what you need to think through as you're putting together your impact analysis. Some of the factors, depending on the activity, they might not be applicable, and other factors, you'll want to provide some information. So we just want to make sure that you've considered each of the factors on that Appendix 2. Next question. John, I'm going to ask you to take this one. Are all of the waivers in the operations notice listed? Can you clarify Appendix 1 for us, John?
Sure. Yep. Appendix 1 in the operations notice has those 17 waivers. And within those 17 waivers, there are about 70 activities. So all of those will be listed in the MTW supplement form. And just kind of to repeat what Jenny said, if of those 17 waivers, you're only implementing, say, 2 or 5 in the first year, you're only going to be asked questions about those 5. And when you come in to do it next year, those 5 will already be pre-populated. So the first time through, it might be a little bit heavier of a lift. You can think of all of the red tape you're stripping away from your program and things like that. But it gets sort of the first time through is a we know it's new, but it'll be a lot easier in future years just for you to do a quick update. Hope that answered that question.
Great, thanks, John. And John, I've got a couple more heading your way, so don't get too comfortable.
Okay.
Next question, John. Can the public hearing for the PHA plan be the same public hearing for the MTW supplement?
Yes, because it's a supplement to the PHA plan. So yes, it can absolutely be part of that PHA plan public hearing. Yes.
Great. All right, John, another one coming your way. As a small PHA, we currently do not submit the annual plan annually. Does that change for MTW?
It changes in that you'll have to submit the MTW supplement. We're not, because that change, I don't know if it was through Quora or, but you don't have to submit the PHA plan annually, but you will have to submit the MTW supplement to the PHA plan annually. You would still submit your regular PHA plan on the regular process if it's every 5 years, but you will still need to submit your MTW supplement annually with that certifications of compliance, just so you're able to tell us what you're doing and we can follow it. And again, there's an evaluation component. We're really trying to learn what's happening out there. And so that's why you'll do that every year.
Great. Thanks, John. I am going to give you a break and answer this next one, and then the subsequent one is back to you, John. So this next question is, can we use the draft supplement on the MTW page to prepare responses to the supplement until the webinar on March 24th, while the questions change very much before OMB approval? So the short answer to this is yes, you can start, the MTW supplement is going through the Paperwork Reduction Act public comment process. So it's been posted for public comments for the 60-day version, for the 30-day version. So we anticipate that the final version that will be approved will be very similar to what was published for the 30-day version, and that's what is on our website. So you can start thinking through the activities using the questions in the supplement on the website. That said, it's not final until it's final, and so there's always possible that there may be certain things that change once it's approved, as it's being approved by OMB. So it's not final until it's approved by OMB, but I think what is on our website is a really good place to start. Okay, so John from ICF, there looks like somebody is having some trouble with audio, so if you could check on that. But we haven't answered this question, Vicki. The question is, has the department signed and sent the MTW ACC amendments to the PHA? And the answer to that question is no. Those ACC amendments are kind of working through the approval chain. We're hoping to get them signed off very shortly, and we'll follow up with the appropriate people within the department to get to see where those are, but those have not yet been signed and executed by HUD. So John, I think there's can you clarify again on the 17 waivers with the 70 associated activities in the operations notice? The question here is, so the waivers don't require HUD approval, question mark.
They need to be, in order to implement them, those 70 waivers have already been, so to speak, pre-scrubbed. They have gone through the whole process internally. Field offices, our general counsel, the MTW office, voucher office, public housing office, capital fund office, REACT, they've all looked at them and said they're good to go. If you implement them within the safe harbors, they do just need to be put into an MTW supplement, and that does need to be approved. And that's really just for the public process. We really want that to happen. So it does have to be in an approved MTW plan. But I guess what we're saying when we're saying they're sort of pre-approved, as long as you're operating within the MTW, the safe harbors, and not going beyond any of the safe harbors, that's going to be approved. It's really just the formality of going through that public process. That's a great question.
Great, thanks, John. Are there any other questions before we give you guys some more homework? Okay, Lara, if you could turn it to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to finish today's conversation kind of in the same place where we began it. So we wanted you to really have this information and then to do a little bit more thinking within your own PHAs, with your staff, with your communities as you're able, to really think about kind of how to go forward, right? Where do we start, and then how do we move forward from here? We're going to continue to dig into the supplement during the webinar on the 24th, and then again on office hours. So we're going to be talking about this a lot. But right now, we are giving you all a homework assignment for the conversation on the 24th. And so you received this this slide as an attachment to the email that I sent out, I guess it was yesterday. So what we're hoping to do with this is to provide you with a tool so that you can think about kind of your own work, similar to how you saw Jenny and myself, kind of the conversation that we had earlier today. So in advance of our next conversation, we think it would be helpful for you guys to kind of use this tool or whatever tool makes sense to you to start mapping out kind of what you think you might need to pull together for your first supplement submittal. So the first thing you want to think about is the impact, right? We've talked about what is the impact that you're hoping to achieve? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? You know, jot down some ideas there. Capture some ideas that you've heard from the public, from your residents, from your external stakeholders. And I know that you've had a lot of feedback and conversations with your staff and your internal stakeholders. So capture all of that idea, capture those concerns, and maybe summarize, like, what is that impact statement? What are we trying to do? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? That's all the section over there in the blue. And so then next we'll move over into the activities. So then you think about, okay, here's a challenge, you know, that we've identified that seems to be a common denominator across the various pieces that we're just kind of getting started with. What might we want to do that? How might we want to achieve that? And so for this, you're just thinking of activities. You don't necessarily narrow yourself to the waivers and the activities and the operations notice. Just think about, you know, look at what the 39 agencies have done. Think about, you know, maybe some ideas that your stakeholders might have some ideas. Think about what are some of the activities that you might want to do to address that challenge, and what do you need to keep in mind, right? Think about that impact analysis. What about any financial implications for the agency? Any financial implications for the your residents? Is there certain MTW statutory objectives that it attaches to? So think about how you might want to operationalize those activities, and then think about, okay, does this even need MTW? So then it's at this point that you want to go back to the MTW operations notice, check out Appendix 1. We've got it on our website. We've got a kind of an interactive version of it on the HUD Exchange. And go and take a look at the waivers and the activities that are available to you through MTW. And maybe there's waivers and activities within there that just make sense and, you know, that hit where you are trying to go, and determine, you know, which activities you want to use, if you can do them within the safe harbors, you know, just kind of like get that thought process going. And then now that you've kind of done through those pieces, start thinking through the MTW supplement. And so we've identified some tips here as it relates to this supplement, and you heard some of them from John and Jenny, and I need to put on my glasses so I can remind myself that you want to make sure the hard copy of the supplement is available on our website right now, pending HUD OMB approval, of course. You might want to, we highly recommend you draft any narrative language in a in a separate Word document prior to putting it into the supplement, that you identify where are you getting the information for any information sources. And then you want to think about like all of the additional information that you need to kind of pull together that you'll need when you put together the supplement. And we'll go into this in more detail next week and beyond, or not, the 24th. But any of the narratives, the hardship policy, you'll need to append the public comments, how you've analyzed and made decisions based upon them, the certifications, compliance, those things. So we've kind of tried to list out those things that you need to like pull together as you're putting together the MTW supplement. Again, this is just to kind of get you thinking. There's 31 Cohort 1 agencies, and you're in 31 very different places, and you're planning for your MTW. Some of you have gone through the public process we've described and are ready to go. Others are kind of getting started and trying to figure out how best to move forward. So you need to start where you are. What we were hoping to do is just to kind of give you all an idea to kind of get on the same page, kind of things to consider as you're getting started. And then next week, I'm sorry, I keep on saying next week, the 24th, what we will do is we will, you will have done your homework assignment, and then we will break up into those small groups once again, and we will hear your thoughts around your questions, any challenges that arose as you were completing this exercise. And we absolutely are not going to be asked to see the completed the completed form. That's between you and your agency to kind of get it started. We will see it when it arrives to us as part of the MTW supplement. But we do want you to kind of do the thinking and then come to us with kind of let us know what you're thinking, what makes sense, what works, what challenges you may have, and then hopefully we'll be able to have some good conversation around that. Any questions on your homework assignments? Are you guys still there? All right. So there you have it. I'm going to do some closeout, Laura. Next slide, please. As we're kind of doing this closeout, as always, we really want to hear from you about how you think this webinar went, if there's any specific topics that you think would be helpful for future webinars, or any suggestions so that we can make these onboarding experiences better. Please let us know, because we definitely want to make sure that they're helpful. Laura, next slide. Okay, as always, we'd like to remind you what resources are available to you. Don't forget the selection notice. That's all, a lot of the requirements specific to this cohort. Your welcome letter, the timeline, we provided a lot of good resources there. The MTW operations notice is the document that you need to be familiar with. You need to read it. We're trying to break it up into accessible pieces, but the ops notice is what you need to know. We have a nice clean version of it up on our website, the MTW page on HUD.gov, the expansion page with a lot of information materials for you guys. And then on HUD Exchange, we have a lot of resources as it relates to the training. We have the online manual, and all of these webinars, of course, are going to be available on the HUD Exchange page. Next slide. Okay, and just as a reminder, the next webinar will be the part 2 of the MTW supplement. I am very, very hopeful that it has been approved by OMB by then. Everybody, fingers and toes crossed. We are looking forward to that. Again, on that piece, we will not only be having those small group discussions on the homework that you're doing, but we'll also be talking a little bit more about how to access the tool. This is the reminder to please let us know, give us the name of your point of contact, the people who need to be able to access that tool. We'd like to have that information. And then once we have the OMB approved version of the supplement and everybody has access to it, we will schedule the supplement office hours, and the contractor that put together the online tool will join us there as well. The PIC-NG webinar is being postponed, so keep your eyes out for that. We will let you know when that one is scheduled. And next slide. Thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. We really appreciate you being joining us this afternoon. Please let us know if there's anything that we can do to make these more helpful for you, if there's anything that we can do to improve them going forward, and have a great afternoon. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
This concludes the MTW supplement to the PHA plan and the public process webinar. Thank you for attending. As a reminder, the recording and slides will be available on the HUD Exchange. Please join us for the next webinar in this series, which will also focus on the MTW supplement on March 24th. Thank you and have a great day.